Hey everybody, it's John from Mammoth Club, and today I'm going to be talking about a video that was released 11 years ago. It's called Humans Need Not Apply by CBG Gray. I want to give kind of more of a post-mortem that since we are 11 years in the future as to what's going on. Now, the big picture here is how AI is presented 10 years ago and how AI is presented today. And when you read an article about AI, you have to just kind of think about how fast is all of this stuff really going to happen? And by using this comparison, you can kind of think about what's going on. Let's get to it. So this video came out more than 10 years ago. And what's interesting about this video is I remember it quite clearly. I remember watching it. And then I traveled to see some family and we talked about it for an hour. And I went to see some friends and family later that night. Different friends and family, of course. And then we talked about it even more. And so no matter where I went, I talked about this a lot. And there's a lot of people talking about this video here. And it was quite influential at the time. And what I really want to talk about today is the way that AI is being presented and people's expectations for the future. Because remember, this video and the way it's presented more than 10 years ago and how things kind of shaped up, right? So this video is very interesting to do kind of a post-mortem on, and I want to talk about the gains today. So imagine it's August 13th, 2014, and guess what? This video comes out. Whoa, what are we going to do 10 years in the future? What is it going to be like? Well, we now have that information. And I kind of want to talk about it. So let's get into it.
Every human used to have to hunt or gather to survive, but humans are smartly lazy, so we made tools to make our work easier. From sticks to plows to tractors, we've gone from everyone needing to make food to modern agriculture with almost no one needing to make food. And yet, we still have abundance. Of course, it's not just farming, it's everything. We've spent the last several thousand years building tools to reduce physical labor of all kinds. These are mechanical muscles, stronger, more reliable, and more tireless than human muscles ever could be. And that's a good thing. Replacing human labor with mechanical muscles frees people to specialize, and that leaves everyone better off, even those still doing physical labor. This is how economies grow and standards of living rise. Some people have specialized to be programmers and engineers whose job is to build mechanical minds. Just as mechanical muscles made human labor less in demand, so are mechanical minds making human brain labor less in demand. This is an economic revolution. You may think we've been here before, but we haven't. This time is different.
The real question is it actually different? Now, I would say that probably the scope and the scale of AI and robotics and the applications of it are definitely bigger, but it's not going to be as big as people think, right? Still, and as a person who is making stuff with AI almost all the time, like after I finish this video, I'm going to start, using AI to build some products. It's not as good as people think. It does help you though, right? It does reduce the time, but all that does is the scope of what you're doing gets moved. Okay, let's continue.
When you think of automation, you probably think of this: giant, custom-built, expensive, efficient, but really dumb robots blind to the world and their own work. They were a scary kind of automation, but they haven't taken over the world because they're only cost-effective in narrow situations.
I should also note that car prices are higher than they were in the past. So if you were to buy a Honda Civic today, guess what? It's more expensive than a Honda Civic in 2014. So did automation make it cheaper, or what happened there? So again, probably your money's worth less. That's one thing, because inflation, technically, if we go by what the actual numbers say, like, your money's worth 1% to 3% less every year. So if you have $100 in 1 year, then the next year it's worth 97 worth of purchasing power. And then over 10 years, it gets to be a lot more. Let's put it that way. So interesting. And people still work car plants. So let's continue.
But they're the old kind of automation. This is the new kind. Meet Baxter. Unlike these things which require skilled operators and technicians and millions of dollars, Baxter has vision and can learn what you want him to do by watching you do it. And he costs less than the average annual salary of a human worker. Unlike his older brothers, he isn't pre-programmed for one specific job. He can do whatever work is within the reach of his arms. Baxter is what might be thought of as a general-purpose robot, and general purpose is a big deal. Think computers. They too started out as highly custom and highly expensive, but when cheap-ish general-purpose computers appeared, they quickly became vital to everything. A general-purpose computer can just as easily calculate change or assign seats on an airplane or play a game or do anything just by swapping its software. And this huge demand for computers of all kinds is what makes them both more powerful and cheaper every year. Baxter today is the computer of the 1980s. He's not the apex, but the beginning. Even if Baxter is slow, his hourly cost is pennies worth of electricity, while his meat-based competition costs minimum wage.
Now, this couldn't be known back then, but mention the energy here. One of the things that I find really interesting is the demand for energy because of data centers is gone. So there's a lot of push for new energy, whether it be nuclear or whatever. So that's another cross current that, isn't mentioned in this video, but is totally important when it comes to today.
A tenth of the speed is still cost-effective when it's 100th the price. And while Baxter isn't as smart as some of the other things we will talk about, he's smart enough to take over many low-skilled jobs. And we've already seen how dumber robots than Baxter can replace jobs. In new supermarkets, what used to be 30 humans is now 1 human overseeing 30 cashier robots. Or take the hundreds of thousands of baristas employed worldwide. There's a barista robot coming for them. Sure, maybe your guy makes the double mocha whatever just perfect and you'd never trust anyone else, but millions of people don't care and just want a decent cup of coffee.
That's also interesting. There is more, I've started seeing more and more of these kind of automated baristas, but there's still Starbucks and it's still a long line. So where are these, right? It's 10 years in the future. And, I would argue, and I should probably really find that stat, but most people still go to Starbucks. Now, Starbucks is another issue in itself because of the company. But for the most part, people still go to cafes because of the experience. And that's something that's going to be a theme on this channel, is that while the utility might be taken away by AI, or it could be, AI outsourced, the experiences don't change. And I could make 5 videos on that one topic with specific examples. Let's continue.
Oh, and by the way, this robot is actually a giant network of robots that remembers who you are and how you like your coffee no matter where you are. Pretty convenient. We think of technological change as the fancy new expensive stuff, but the real change...
Just on that note here, I don't have time to make this app, but imagine if there were a series of robots, baristas everywhere. Well, you would have to get, this would be super annoying, but you'd have to get an app for every single one. And perhaps there's an opportunity for an entrepreneur to make one app that accesses all of these. So if you like a half sweet mocha, that's your favorite drink, let's say, no whip, then you could enter into this one app, and that there's an opportunity there, right? So a lot of the doomsaying and a lot of these people don't have the lateral and divergent thinking skills that I have. And I'm not saying that it's better to have this or not. In fact, if anything, this kind of thinking is a little worse than the typical kind of thinking of convergent thinking, which is fine. And our whole society is built up that because most people naturally fall into that way of thinking, which is fine. But when I see this stuff, I think, oh, there's so many possibilities. Okay. So again, there's opportunity there. There's always an opportunity that you can exploit. Now, if you want me to talk about that kind of thinking more, please post in the comments. Post whatever you want, by the way. I love reading them.
Which comes from last decade stuff getting cheaper and faster. That's what's happening to robots now. And because their mechanical minds are capable of decision-making, they are out-competing humans for jobs in a way no pure mechanical muscle ever could. Imagine a pair of horses in the early 1900s talking about technology. One worries all these new mechanical muscles will make horses unnecessary. The other reminds him that everything so far has made their lives easier. Remember all that farm work? Remember running from coast to coast delivering mail? Remember riding into battle? All terrible. These new city jobs are pretty cushy, and with so many humans in the cities, there will be more jobs for horses than ever. Even if this car thingy takes off, he might say, there will be new jobs for horses we can't imagine. But you, dear viewer from Beyond 2000, know what happened. There are still working horses, but nothing like before. The horse population peaked in 1915. From that point on, it was nothing but down. There isn't a rule of economics.
Right. And so this is one of the cases where, yes, we don't use horses as much as we used to. And if the horse population peaked, there's just fewer of them. Now, I don't think it's going to happen with humans necessarily. I mean, other than the demographic crisis, but that's a totally separate thing. It could be related, but that, again, probably another video. But for the most part, some things do go away for good. It's impossible to predict what that is. There's so many different cross currents, and sometimes things happen and there's no rhyme or reason for it. And few people predicted it.
Economics that says better technology makes more better jobs for horses. It sounds shockingly dumb to even say that out loud, but swap horses for humans and suddenly people think it sounds about right. As mechanical muscles push horses out of the economy, mechanical minds will do the same to humans. Not immediately, not everywhere, but in large enough numbers and soon enough that it's going to be a huge problem if we're not prepared. And
I don't know what he means by soon enough, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But if you were watching this, 11 years ago, would you think that it's 5 years or 10 years? I think people would say that. And again, today, if you look at all the headlines, in 5 years, there's going to be no web designers whatsoever. Maybe. We'll see.
We're not prepared. You, like the second horse, may look at the state of technology now and think it can't possibly replace your job, but technology gets better, cheaper, and faster at a rate biology can't match. Just as the car was the beginning of the end for the horse, so now does the car show us the shape of things to come. Self-driving cars aren't the future. They're here and they work. Self-driving cars have traveled hundreds of thousands of...
They work, do they? Still can. Elon Musk has said full self-driving is 6 months away. And, still, I took an Uber the other day and there was a driver. And of course, I know there's some places and the robo-taxi and Waymo, they're getting there. But this is, again, a long time ago. People thought it would be 5 years away, but it's not. Okay. It could be 5 years away from now or 10 years away. But you also have to remember that some of the scopes of these problems are really, really massive, right? Self-driving cars is an extremely difficult problem to solve. There is way too many variables and there's so much chaos. Now, self-driving boats, on the other hand, for example, if you were to get a boat to go from, manufacturer to, from one country to another that manufactures it to the one country that it's shipping to, that's a way easier problem to solve because, the sea is open and vast. The hardest part is, of course, docking. And even then, if most of the voyage was automated, then you would need less for the automation. But then there could be some other things that happen, like, for example, piracy, which is a problem in shipping. Then you need, again, maybe the same amount of people, but they're doing different tasks. Maybe there's, and I'm just making this up, if it took 10 people to run the boat, with automation, you eliminate 5, but now you have 5 security guards making sure the ship doesn't get boarded by pirates, right? So you still have 10 people on that ship. It's just something else happens, right? So what's soon? 5, 10, 50 years? Who knows?
Of miles up and down the California coast and through cities, all without human intervention. The question is not if they'll replace cars, but how quickly. They don't need to be perfect, they just need to be better than us. Human drivers, by the way, kill 40,000 people a year with cars just in the United States. Given that self-driving cars don't blink, don't text while driving, don't get sleepy or stupid, it's easy to see them being better than humans
Also, look at that LiDAR on the top. That looks incredibly ancient compared to what a Waymo looks like today. I just find it funny. I also have a Comet 3 and it's amazing. And I use it for long road trips. It makes driving a lot better. But again, I have to be there. Now, I know if you have a Tesla, it's better. And there's some other ones that are really good too. But again, we're not there. I can't just push a button in my car today and go to where I'm going. I don't know when that's going to happen. It could be 5 or 10 years down the road. It could be 20 years down the road. But until then, you're going to need to probably drive. Because the edge cases in driving are really tough. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to this AI stuff. Sure, you can get 90% of the way, you can build 90% of a website, but then the edge cases take the time down from where it used to be if you were to code, but still more than you would expect. Again, I built a software as a service, took me 100 hours. Okay. I just didn't push a button and did it, right? It took me 100 hours. I know what I'm doing with software. I'm going to talk about that in another video.
Because they already are. Now, to describe self-driving cars as cars at all is like calling the first cars mechanical horses. Cars in all their forms are so much more than horses that using the name limits your thinking about what they can even do. Let's call self-driving cars what they really are. Autos, the solution to the transport objects from point A to point B problem. Traditional cars happen to be human-sized to transport human, but tiny autos can work in warehouses and gigantic autos can work in pit mines. Moving stuff around is who knows how many jobs, but the transportation industry...
Actually, that's an interesting thing. Automation within mining and farming is actually quite good, but you still need farmers. There's still edge cases, right? Again, I think that's probably, if there's anything you take away from this video, that the edge cases slows this down considerably, okay? And again, the as I mentioned in a previous video, a lot of the job losses are just due to the economic situation rather than AI.
In the United States employs about 3 million people. Extrapolating worldwide, that's something like 70 million jobs at a minimum. These jobs are over.
Oh, they're over, are they? You know, I wonder what it is today. If there probably still are 70 million people being employed, right? I don't think that self-driving car technology has really displaced the need for drivers. 10 years. Continue.
Usual argument is that the unions will prevent it, but history is filled with workers who fought technology that would replace them, and the workers always lose. Economics always wins, and there are huge incentives across wildly diverse industries to adopt autos. For many transportation companies, humans are about a third their total costs. That's just the straight salaries. Humans sleeping in their long-haul trucks cost time and money, accidents cost money, carelessness costs money. If you think insurance companies will be against it, guess what? Their perfect driver is one who pays their small premiums and never gets into an accident.
Now that's another thing. So one of the things that AI could do is they could reduce the amount of accidents that truckers have because of the automation here. Now, it's interesting that maybe a few years after this, a lot of car companies started putting in technology to brake, because there was some really ridiculous statistic, like, and I can't remember the exact statistic, but a lot of accidents are caused by people just not braking. So if you have the technology to brake, then you have less accidents or fewer accidents. And if you have fewer accidents, then technically the roads are safer. You still need drivers. It's not like those people are going away. It's just, it makes life better.
The autos are coming, and they're the first place where most people will really see the robots changing society. But there are many other places in the economy where the same thing is happening, just less visibly. So it goes with autos, so it goes for everything. It's easy to look at autos and Baxters and think technology has always gotten rid of low-skilled jobs we don't want people doing anyway. They'll get more skilled and do better educated jobs like they've always done. Even ignoring the problem of pushing 100 million additional people through higher education, white-collar work is no safe haven either. If your job is sitting in front of a screen and typing and clicking, like maybe you're supposed to be doing right now, the bots are coming for you too, buddy. Software bots are both intangible and way faster and cheaper than physical robots. Given that white-collar workers are, from a company perspective, both more expensive and more numerous, the incentive to automate their work is greater than low-skilled work. And that's just
interesting how he says more numerous, and that's true. And again, I've talked about this in another video, but the problem with a lot of what you see in corporate America is there's a bloat of jobs that probably could have been reduced, but they, for whatever reason, have not done it. Okay. And AI just exposed the inefficiency. Also, a lot of things that he's talking about here predate a lot of the machine learning kind of best practices that happened maybe a few years after this, like in 2017, 2018. Because, you know, Mammoth, what we did is we did a lot of machine learning tutorials starting in 2017 and 2018. I remember I had to change the way my brain works, right? So if you don't know, like, traditional coding is if this, do that. And that's very oversimplification. I get it. But the way that these machine learning things worked is like you throw things in and it makes predictions. Okay. And, you know, the machine learning tutorials we did in 2017, 2018 are very, very basic. It's like almost like coding a machine language in terms of what they are today. But there was no ChatGPT. There was nothing like that back then. And it's interesting that there was kernels of this that kind of showed the progression. So I get it. Like you see a kernel and it's the bottom brick of a wall, right? And so if it's a bottom brick of a wall, then you can see where that wall is going to be eventually. However, that wall might take longer to build than you might imagine, and it might not be as high, if I were to use a metaphor, that is.
Just what automation engineers are for. These are skilled programmers whose entire job is to replace your job with a software bot. You may think even the world's smartest automation engineer could never make a bot to do your job, and you may be right, but the cutting edge of programming isn't super smart programmers writing bots, it's super smart programmers writing bots that teach themselves how to do things the programmer could never teach them to do. How that works is well beyond the scope of this video, but the bottom line is there are limited ways to
Let's go back just a second here. Yeah, essentially, this is a standard neural network. But for the most part, he's right. And if you look at this, what's happening is like people are writing bots. Well, not bots, but like writing LLMs, what we call them today, to write software for them. But it still takes time. And again, the scope is now pushed. If I can spend 100 hours making one product, if I spend 1,000 hours, then I'm going to make a better product. Okay, that's just what it is. Do you need as many engineers? Well, you might not, but those people might do other things. It's kind of the key. People will find other jobs. It might not be the same job. Just how markets work, right? Might not be the same job, but there probably will be a job.
Beyond the scope of this video, but the bottom line is there are limited ways to show a bot a bunch of stuff to do, show the bot a bunch of correctly done stuff, and it can figure out how to do the job to be done. Even with just a goal and no knowledge of how to do it, the bot can still learn. Take the stock market, which in many ways is no longer a human endeavor. It's mostly bots that taught themselves to trade stocks, trading stocks with other bots that taught themselves. As a result, the floor of the New York Stock Exchange isn't filled with traders doing their day jobs anymore. It's largely a TV set. So bots have learned the market and bots have learned to write. If you picked up a newspaper lately, you've probably already read a story written by a bot. There are companies that teach bots to write anything, sports stories, TPS reports, even say those quarterly reports that you write at work. Paperwork, decision-making, writing, a lot of
It's true. And one of the things, again, is, for documentation, it's such a pain to document your software. Well, now you can just do it. And maybe there's a person still just documenting the software, but they get better documentation out for the same amount of time. That's the key.
Human work falls into that category, and the demand for human mental labor in these areas is on the way down. But surely the professions are still safe from bots, yes? When you think lawyer, it's easy to think of trials, but the bulk of lawyering is actually drafting legal documents, predicting the likely outcome and impact of lawsuits, and something called discovery, which is where boxes of paperwork get dumped on the lawyers and they need to find the pattern or the one out-of-place transaction among it all. This can be bot work. Discovery, in particular, is already not a human job in many law firms. Not because there isn't paperwork to go through, there's more of it than ever, but because clever research bots shift through millions of emails and memos and accounts in hours, not weeks, crushing human researchers in terms of not just cost and time.
So this is actually something that's interesting. Yes, this is an area, especially for entry-level people going into law, that a lot of these bots will in the old system of, human generated content, yes, the bot will do things quicker. But now there's so much more data that it might take bot and more human kind of oversight to do it. Now, again, as I've mentioned, I think a lot of what the future is people managing bots or using AI, analogous to how people use a spreadsheet.
But most importantly, accuracy. Bots don't get sleepy reading through a million emails. But that's the simple stuff. IBM has a bot named Watson. You may have seen him on TV destroy humans at Jeopardy, but that was just a fun side project for him. Watson's day job is to be the best doctor in the world, to understand what people say in their own words and give back accurate diagnoses. He's already doing that at Sloan Kettering, giving guidance on lung cancer treatments. Just as All
right, so even today, Watson is not a thing. It's all ChatGPT. Now, of course, no one would know that, right? But ChatGPT is not bad. However, there was a story this week how someone got poisoned because they took too much of the wrong medicine from ChatGPT. So again, you should always double check everything that ChatGPT gives you. But I found it actually quite interesting. And in another video, I'm going to talk about my wrist fracture and how ChatGPT helped me out on that. Very interesting video, and you should definitely like and subscribe for it.
Those don't need to be perfect, they just need to make fewer mistakes than humans. The same goes for doctor bots. Human doctors are by no means perfect. The frequency and severity of misdiagnoses are terrifying, and human doctors are severely limited in dealing with a human's complicated medical history. Understanding every drug and every drug's interaction with every other drug is beyond the scope of human knowability, especially when there are research robots whose whole job it is to test thousands of new drugs at a time. And human doctors can only improve through their own experiences.
So this is a real problem that, again, even before ChatGPT, that machine learning can solve, because, a lot of the research for drugs is done with drug A, drug B, and drug C, but never between drug A and drug B at the same time. And the only way that you can do this is to, and it's really interesting. This is a problem before ChatGPT, but now you can take the symptoms of, and the quantity of drug A and drug B, and now you can make predictive analysis. But that's a job in itself that never existed. Doing predictive analysis, again, it's data science, it's machine learning, it's AI, it's all those things. And now you can find out the difference or the interactions between drugs. Okay. And that's something that we didn't know before, and we just kind of took for granted that I guess it would work out. But now I guess we'll get more information, and it will lead to more complexity. Another thing that a lot of people are not quite getting is that when we use this AI, the world gets more complex. And sure, the complexity of the world might not be as high as what the AI does, but we also have to perceive things in a different way. And our regulatory systems are stuck they're really behind. So, is AI going to make drug pharmaceutical companies obsolete because you can just, type in your problem, go into ChatGPT, and out comes a drug? I don't think a lot of people think that's a thing, but maybe some people do. They're like, oh, whatever. We don't need that anymore. We can just make a drug with ChatGPT. I think a lot of people don't think that, but the point is that there's a new processes that people have to know and understand. And that's why I have a training company, is because you to teach all these new processes.
Bots can learn from the experience of every doctor bot, can read the latest in medical research and keep track of everything that happens to all their patients worldwide and make correlations that would be impossible to find otherwise. Not all doctors will go away, but when the doctor bots are comparable to humans and they're only as far away as your phone, the need for general doctors will be less.
Okay. Again, as I mentioned before, the experience of going to a doctor is different than an experience on screen. Now, of course, a lot of the doctor appointments, just like for my checkups, I don't even speak to the doctor anymore. I just kind of call them. So that's interesting. And maybe in the future, you can just interface with an AI and they will tell you everything. And, I think people do that already. And certainly I've done that with, my wrist fracture, right? And you can just kind of interface with it. But going to the doctor is an experience. A lot of people don't like it. People will want that human connection. A lot of people in technology, I should be careful when I say this, but they tend to like being alone a little bit more, and they're uncomfortable in front of a screen. And just a side note, during the pandemic, when e-learning boomed, people realized that maybe they could learn online, but maybe they don't have the discipline, or it might feel unnatural to do it in front of a screen all day. Now, for me, I'm in front of a screen all day. It's awesome. Okay. We're talking about like introverts and whatnot. So again, there's going to be a portion of people, and that portion is way larger than people probably realize, that would want to go to a doctor and just, hey, get this thing on iPad. Probably not. At least not in the near term. Maybe in the far distant future, you'll have the doctor like the doctor in, I think it was Passengers, the movie where they're going between the stars and they wake up early, where the doctor just says, take these pills. And the person got a lethal dose of radiation, I think. And they say, take these pills. And that's what it is. And maybe we'll get there at some point, but not everyone's going to want to do that.
Professionals, white-collar workers, and low-skill workers all have things to worry about from automation. But perhaps you are unfazed because you're a special creative snowflake. Well, guess what? You're not that special. Creativity may feel like magic, but it isn't. The brain is a complicated machine, perhaps the most complicated machine in the whole universe, but that hasn't stopped us from trying to simulate it. There is this notion that just as mechanical muscles allowed us to move into thinking jobs, that mechanical minds will allow us to move into creative work. But even if we assume the human mind is magically creative, it's not, but just for the sake of argument, artistic creativity isn't what the majority of jobs depend on. The number of writers and poets and directors and actors and artists who actually make a living doing their work is a tiny portion of the labor force. And given that these are professions dependent on popularity, they'll always be a very small portion of the population. There can't be such a thing as a poem and painting-based economy. Oh, by the way, this music in the background that you're listening to, it was written by a bot. Her name is Emily Howell, and she can write an infinite amount of new music all day for free. And people can't tell the difference between her and human composers when put to a blind test. Talking about artificial creativity gets weird fast. What does that even mean? But nonetheless, it's a developing field. People used to think that playing chess was a uniquely creative human skill that machines could never do, right up until the point they beat the best of us. And so it will go for all human talents.
So yeah, we talked about this with the Suno video. Yeah, there will be, the utility of music perhaps might be outsourced. But again, a lot of these predictive natures, the way the predictive natures work is that there's going to be nothing new. And even if I was an artist, I would go in and prompt something new. I could put death metal and rap together or something like that. Like something, two different things that didn't make sense. And maybe it gives me some really cool outputs, right? So this is interesting that, again, that piano music, now solo piano music is quite easy to do. The new stuff with Suno is on like a whole other level of magnitude from what they just did right there. So there definitely is, he said he can't make, there's no such thing as a painting-based economy, but the experience of playing piano or painting or, drawing, that I don't think is going to go away, right? Things will move from utility to experience. And we cannot get rid of our inherent biology. And because we can't do that, there are things that I'd argue that will always stick with us, and drawing is one of them, because, well, we have cave paintings, right? And perhaps that was the only thing they could do at the time. But still, the experience won't go away. In fact, you can still take a horse-drawn carriage, interestingly.
Right. This may have been a lot to take in, and you might want to reject it. It's easy to be cynical of the endless and idiotic predictions of futures that never are. So that's why it's important to emphasize again that this stuff isn't science fiction. The robots are here right now. There is a terrifying amount of working automation in labs and warehouses around the world. We have been through economic revolutions before, but the robot revolution is different. Horses aren't unemployed now because they got lazy as a species. They're unemployable. There's little work that a horse can do to pay for its housing and hay. And many bright, perfectly capable humans will find themselves the new horse, unemployable through no fault of their own. But if you still think new jobs will save us, here is one final point to consider. The US Census in 1776 tracked only a few kinds of jobs. Now, there are hundreds of kinds of jobs, but the new ones are not a significant part of the labor force. Here's the list of jobs ranked by the number of people who perform them. It's a sobering list with the transportation industry at the top.
Let's just go over this list just a little bit here. So, again, it's possible that we might see reductions in these. And maybe in the long term, 100, 200 years, we'll see a lot of these jobs migrate out. But for the most part, a lot of these jobs require an experience. Okay. So if you break your wrist, you're going to want at least a registered nurse to help you out, and doctors. Okay. Yeah. Elementary school team. This is probably another one that I could make a whole other video on. But really, school isn't just about learning. It's about other things, about human connection. And going to school, to an elementary school teacher, is an experience that I think is a good experience. Now, there's other things in here. For example, secretaries and cashiers. These people might not be doing secretarial jobs, but they might be doing something else. The real problem with AI that a lot of people don't seem to necessarily understand is, at a certain point in the IQ spectrum, you can't do any work. And what if you move that closer and closer to the average IQ? Then that starts to displace a lot of work. I don't think that's what's going to necessarily happen. It can happen. But what I think what happens is that we just move the goalposts. Okay. And I'm just going to give a quick example of this. A good example would be, well, there's no moon bases right now. There's no moon hotel. Okay. I can't take a trip to the skies of Venus. Now, these are pretty lofty goals here. Think about it. If I want to create a hotel on the moon to bring passengers, can I just go into ChatGPT, tell it to build the, give me the plans and go? Give you an outline. It's way more difficult. Okay. Way more difficult. And there's going to be a lot of work to be done by humans to get people to do that. Now, why would we want to build a hotel on the moon? Well, I think rich people would love to go there. Okay. Or influencers. Hey, you could see someone on TikTok being like, hey, here's my hotel, stay at the lunar resorts or whatever. Okay. And by doing that, it really does move technology, right? It will move technology forward. And I think it would be interesting to see, because humans always want more. And because they always want more, they're going to push the envelope more. And that's just the moon landing, which is the easiest place to go to. We haven't even been to Mars yet. We haven't set foot on Titan. Hey, there's a whole ocean under Europa that we could get to, could talk about, and it takes time to do. Now, again, a lot of these jobs in here, people think, well, who cares about the moon or Mars or Europa? And you'd be right. Well, there's the ocean that we can explore too. And there's just other products that might need extra work, right? So the thing is that some people, they stay in the same job forever. Other people move around. And if you want a career, then you have to move around. You have to retrain yourself, which again, is why I own a company that does this, because you're always going to need to retrain no matter what. And sure, you can use ChatGPT to do that, but the experience of learning is always going to be a little bit different. Let's continue. Also, the janitor, before I continue. So yeah, sure. Janitors, we might have robots that clean, but you might have a janitor that manages robots and takes all the edge cases out. The toilet's backed up. Well, all 3 of the bots couldn't do it. So what's the problem? Well, you go figure it out then. Okay. So these numbers might melt away a little bit. I think new jobs will be created. There's just, that's just what I think.
Continuing downward, all of this work existed in some form.
Interesting that he goes down here, but waiter, is that really going to go away anytime soon? I have seen, restaurants deliver their food with a robot, which is cool. My kids loved it. But will he go away? I don't know.
100 years ago, and almost all of them are easy targets for automation. Only when we get to number 33 on the list is there finally something new. Don't think that every barista or white-collar worker need lose their job before things are a problem. The unemployment rate during the Great Depression was 25%. The list above is 45% of the workforce. Just what we've talked about today, the stuff that already works, can push us over that number pretty soon. And given that even in our modern technological wonderland, new kinds of work aren't a significant portion of the economy, this is a big problem. This video isn't about how automation is bad, rather that automation is inevitable. It's a tool to produce abundance for little effort. We need to start thinking now about what to do when large sections of the population are unemployable through no fault of their own. What to do in a future where, for most jobs, humans need not apply.
And so, yes, the other thing that, you think about it, if you think of a corporation and there's work that needs to be done, sure, in today's work, or let's go back 10 years ago, a lot of that stuff can be done, but then more work and more opportunities come up, which require more people. So we'll see. Now, it is cause for concern, because some people might actually become employed because they don't want to upskill, or again, the type of job might move from the low end of the IQ spectrum. If that keeps moving up towards the middle, that's going to be an issue. But I still think there will be more opportunity, because we'll just move the window. There's a whole universe there that we can explore. and the free market will require us to do more. I don't think there's been pretty much a time where people have said, yeah, we got enough. Let's go and sit down and do nothing. Those civilizations tend to get conquered. So there's always a drive for more. And again, I don't want to feel like I'm completely, ripping on this, because it's a very good video. And let's see, how many views did it get? It got almost 18 million views. Now, I didn't make a video like this that was so incredibly on point 11 years ago. It had received 18 million views. And it's just interesting to see where everything is today versus where people thought where it's going. And so you have to kind of always just think about this when people are talking about AI. It's like, is it really going to happen in 5 years? Am I going to not go to the doctor in 5 years? Is the surgeon really going to have a robot there? Probably not. Will the pathologist use machine learning? Yeah, but you still need human oversight because of edge cases. Because, if I send a cell sample and, 9 out of 10 bots say it's not bad, maybe it isn't bad. But what about that? But what if it is bad and the human doctor kind of flags it? There's going to be processes. The big thing that you need to understand with AI is that the world is reorganizing, okay? And you have to reorganize in a way where you become useful. And again, the only way to do that is to train yourself and be ready for it if you have a career. And again, that's why I run a training company. So, because I understood this way back in 2009, 2010, and it's still relevant today, okay? So we'll talk about this more in other videos, but you have to remember that experiences are exactly what you want to be thinking of. The utility versus experience when it comes to any given task, okay? Some things are purely utility. Other things are experiential. I would say going to a live concert with people playing real instruments is more experiential. And I don't know if that's going to go away completely. Yeah, I think as a novelty, you might see robots do that. In fact, if you've been to Chuck E. Cheese, that's kind of what they did, the novelty of that. I still think people are going to do things. Maybe not as much, but people will. We still have Renaissance fairs. I don't think ideas ever, that's kind of weird. Ideas can completely die, but rarely. People will keep it alive. I'm a lot more optimistic about this. However, it is changing, and you have to be ready to be reorganized for the reorganization. And for me, there's two major areas that you need to be invested in. AI is one, and not talking about your money, I'm just talking about your mind, what you're doing. You need to be investing in yourself in AI skills, and you need to know what crypto is going, because that's a whole other layer, which I'll talk about. All right, that concludes this video. Thank you for watching. This was a long video, so if you made it this far, an extra thank you for you. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I definitely want to know your thoughts down below. Please comment. I do read all of them. If you really like this video, you can subscribe to our daily newsletter. You get all of the most important things that are happening in AI right to your inbox, and it's free, so please sign up. And if you want to upskill, you can subscribe to Mammoth Club. For just 55 cents a day, you get all of the latest and greatest tutorials that are project-based that will make your portfolio really awesome and will upskill your career and ultimately get that promotion. And if you're unemployed right now, it will help you get a job. And it's not very expensive. We have tons of content, interactive content, and lots of practice tests. In fact, more than a lot of other leading platforms. So if you want to pass an AWS test or a new AI certification test, it is the #1 thing for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.